CNN kicked off a guest after he told Mehdi HASAN, quote, "I hope your beeper doesn't go off," while discussing the rhetoric spread at former President Donald Trump's Madison Square Garden rally. Let's watch.
If you don't want to be called Nazis, stop doing it.
You've been called an anti-Semite more than anyone else's table.
Yeah.
And people would sit there and, no, by me. I never called you an anti-Semite. Okay. I mean, I'm not sitting here saying
I'm a supporter of the Palestinians, so I'm used to it.
Yeah, I hope your beeper doesn't go off. The thing is that...
Did you just say I should die?
You should not.
No,
did you just say I should be killed?
No, I did not say that. No, I did not say that.
Hold on.
Did your guest just say I should be killed on live TV?
I said I hope you
don't... let me just stop.
You said you hope my beeper doesn't go off.
Because you said I'm a big supporter
of the Palestinians.
Of Hamas?
Guys, let me just stop.
Palestinians.
Are you a supporter
of
Hamas?
No, of course I'm not.
Palestinians
I apologize.
Are you a racist, violent person inciting violence against
Ryan,
That's
disgusting. That is completely...
I apologize.
Good job, CNN. Let's have first block say the Muslim guy should be blown up on TV.
Don't say then I apologize. You literally...
I thought he said Hamas. I apologize.
You didn't think I said Hamas. I said I supported Palestinian rights.
Yes, I did.
Why? Because...
The comment was made by conservative pundit Ryan GIRDUSKY, who is the founder of the 1776 Project PAC. HASAN is a progressive pundit who is Muslim and of Indian descent. The host, Abby Phillip, said this after the segment. Let's watch.
I want to just address what happened in the last segment. And first, I want to apologize to Mehdi HASAN for what was said at this table. It was completely unacceptable. When we get this discussion started, you'll see that Ryan is not at the table. There is a line that was crossed there, and it's not acceptable to me. It's not acceptable to us at this network. We want discussion. We want people who disagree with each other to talk to each other. But when you cross the line of a complete lack of civility, that is not going to happen here on this show.
CNN released a statement that said in part, quote, "There is zero room for racism or bigotry at CNN or on our air. We will not allow guests to be demeaned or for the line of civility to be crossed. Ryan GIRDUSKY will not be welcome back." Reacting on X, Democratic Representative Rashida Tlaib said, quote, "CNN has played a central role in normalizing this kind of open anti-Arab, anti-Muslim, and anti-Palestinian hate, and it's sadly totally unsurprising to see such disgusting statements aired so casually on its network now."
Podcaster Matthew Sheffield wrote, "He's a full-on racist and radical Christian supremacist who has written for racist activist Richard Spencer. He has been running an operation to block Black and LGBT authors from school curricula. He should have never been on CNN."
Meanwhile, GIRDUSKY defended himself, writing on X, quote, "You can stay on CNN if you falsely call every Republican a Nazi and have taken money from Qatar-funded media. Apparently, you can't go on CNN if you make a joke. I'm glad America gets to see what CNN stands for."
Well, this guy, I mean, he clearly is problematic. I mean, he worked for Richard Spencer. He's written.
He never worked for Richard Spencer. That's a lie.
Richard Spencer confirmed it.
No, he did not.
Richard Spencer said over a decade ago via tweet. In a tweet.
Ryan GIRDUSKY, when he was 19 years old, was looking for a place to put a blog post. Richard Spencer, who he had no idea who he was at the time, it was well before he was a open white supremacist.
Why did Richard Spencer write? I confirm. It was.
He didn't confirm that he worked for him. He confirmed that he published a piece that he wrote. That was it.
So publishing a piece does not. Okay.
He wasn't paid for it. He never worked for him.
We don't know for sure. You're making an assumption.
I do know for sure. I asked Ryan myself. He's a friend of mine.
Well, then we should have him on and we should ask him.
We should. I actually suggested we get him on today.
Regardless, I mean, I find it interesting that you're debating. I mean, he still wrote for Richard Spencer. It was published on Richard Spencer's site. You know,
this was in like 2010. Nomi.
Richard Spencer.
Did you know who Richard Spencer was in 2010?
Richard Spencer has been around for a long. I'm old. I'm 40. Okay, so I do know Richard Spencer. He's been around. We've been talking about him for over 10 years at this point. But this is a guy, you know, we're getting caught up on these details and minutia, and I understand that's a great way to defend this. But the problem is this man has an agenda. He's specifically gone after Black and brown communities, LGBTQ groups. The 1776 Project has been called out by the Southern Poverty Law Center.
They're very accurate.
Well, I would say they're pretty nonpartisan.
No, they're not.
Well,
and they actually inspired a potential bombing attack on a Christian nonprofit.
Okay, well, they labeled it a suit and tie version of white supremacists of old, a kind of professional racist in khakis. This is the 1776 group and then, of course, GIRDUSKY, who is far right. And that is why he was pushed off the panel, because of the comments that he said and completely being tone deaf against Mehdi HASAN. Now, you can have your feelings and your debates with Mehdi HASAN, but he is not insulting the man. And I found this apprehensible. I mean, there's a place for free speech, but to have somebody on air who's peddling conspiracy theories, insults, and is openly racist, I think there's a line.
The 1776 PAC is aimed at getting good history teaching in schools and preventing children from being indoctrinated with radical gender ideology. It's not anti-Black, it's not anti-Hispanic. The Southern Poverty Law Center is far from a nonpartisan source. And if we're going to talk about people who are supposedly problematic, let's dive a little bit into Mehdi HASAN's history. He had to apologize for saying that non-Muslims are cattle, for comparing gay people to pedophiles. He is funded by Qatar, which is a known backer of terror. He's not funded by Qatar.
He's funded by Zateo, which is an independent media publication based off of crowdsourcing.
He certainly worked for Al Jazeera for a long time, which is on the Qatari payroll. And how is he not insulting Ryan by suggesting that everyone who attended that Madison Square Garden rally was a Nazi?
I'm sorry, you're all over the place here. Like, I just heard a bunch of different claims, and it's wild to me. I mean, we know what Qatar does. We know what Al Jazeera is. I just want to know, do you defend what he said on that panel? Because at the end of the day, this is a story about Ryan GIRDUSKY, not about Mehdi HASAN. It's about Ryan GIRDUSKY's comments and why he was put off the panel. Do you defend that?
I think the question is then, do you defend what Mehdi HASAN said, saying that
he
people
wasn't
who
kicked off the panel. Okay. I could go. Can I pull up some of your writing from 10 years ago? Are you going to defend that? We're talking about Ryan GIRDUSKY right now. You've made Nazi comments in the past. I'm not going to bring that up.
I haven't. Made Nazi
Raw Story brought it up.
past.
I'm just asking you, Amber. We're talking about one thing, and then you jump to something else. I don't make this personal about you. You constantly put the burden on me. I'm asking you about this man, Ryan, and whether or not you defend him.
I personally wouldn't have said the comment, but I think it's a double standard to say that Mehdi HASAN is allowed to call people Nazis and Ryan GIRDUSKY is not allowed to make a joke
No one said that, Amber. You're literally pulling quotes out of nowhere. We're talking about the CNN
that we
panel.
just watched.
We are talking about the CNN panel in which Ryan was kicked off. Do you defend him?
I just said that I wouldn't have made the joke.
Do you defend him?
Yeah, he's my friend, and I will absolutely defend him.
Okay, so do you think it was okay that he said those things?
I just said I wouldn't have said it. I wouldn't have called Republicans Nazis.
But do you call him out for saying that? There's a difference between something you and he said.
No, I'll defend my friend.
Okay, you'll defend your friend.
I'm loyal.
What's the line? Where's the line?
Not that joke when he was being called a Nazi to his face.
He wasn't being called a Nazi.
It's in the clip. We just watched it.
All right, we'll agree to disagree on this one, but at the end of the day, when we're talking about one comment, we can't just jump all over the place. Like, we're trying to...
How are we jumping all over the place? You said that Ryan GIRDUSKY is problematic. I countered that Mehdi HASAN has a problematic history as well. You said that Ryan is not allowed to make that joke because it was insulting.
I didn't say he wasn't allowed to do anything.
Well, you said he insulted Mehdi HASAN.
I said there's a line in media. No, don't put words in my mouth. There is a tape. I said there's a line in media, right? And they crossed the line, and that's why he was kicked off.
But why did Mehdi HASAN not cross
standards? Because he didn't cross the line and standards in that room. This is a guy who has white supremacist backing.
No, he does not have white supremacist backing.
So Richard Spencer, do you think that Richard Spencer?
We already went over that.
No, but no, I didn't ask you.
Do I think Richard Spencer is a white supremacist? Yes, Ryan GIRDUSKY is not backed by Richard Spencer.
He wrote for him?
Okay, let's go over it again. When Ryan GIRDUSKY was 19 years old and had no idea who Richard Spencer was.
So he found his blog and just accidentally wrote for somebody
Richard
to know about?
Richard Spencer approached him and offered to publish the piece
Google
for him.
didn't exist? Google didn't exist? He's still floating in that land. It's not like he changed his opinions. I find it interesting that you're willing to defend somebody who's making inflammatory comments, and there is a line in journalism, and the line stops at insults and facts, right?
But you're insisting that Mehdi HASAN didn't say that Republicans are Nazis.
I did not insist anything. You're putting the burden on me. We're not talking about Mehdi HASAN. We're talking about Richard.
It's in the clip we're talking about.
Richard was kicked off, not Mehdi.
His name's Ryan.
Ryan was kicked off, not Mehdi.
Right, and my point is that there's a double standard because Mehdi HASAN wasn't kicked off for saying Republicans are Nazis.
He didn't say Republicans are Nazis. He said that Nazis' comments were made at the MSG, which they were. Race replacement theory, Tucker Carlson's comments. Do you stand by those?
Yes.
Do you stand by every single comment in MSG?
I stand by Tucker Carlson's comments because I find it interesting. Yesterday on this panel, you said that Puerto Rico was being colonized by Americans who are tax cheats, who are going there and ruining the culture and driving up the cost of housing. But when Tucker Carlson says it about mainland America and illegal immigrants, suddenly it's great replacement white supremacist theory?
Puerto Rico... Your standards are wild. We are a country of immigrants. Puerto Rico is a colony that does not have oversight over their economy, over their power, over the infrastructure. The United States government has total say, and they don't even have access to those tax breaks. Only rich Americans do who move there and permanently live
Nor
there.
does Washington, D.C. know, Miki. You're talking about Americans going to Puerto Rico as colonization, but we're supposed to allow illegal immigrants to just overrun the southern border.
That's
and
not the same thing at all. And
exactly, it's worse to allow illegal immigrants.
So you think white people are above people of color?
Boy, how did you get that from my comments at all?
Because you're saying it's okay for white Americans to move to Puerto Rico.
I'm not saying that. I'm asking you to have the same standard for Puerto Rico and the mainland.
There's no tax incentives where people are being displaced. You're not being displaced by an undocumented person who's taking low-wage jobs. You're not being displaced by them.
So I'm not allowed to care by the Americans who are?
There aren't. There's been
countless. They're not
reports on
suppressing
this.
wages for Americans.
Why are you afraid of immigrants? Why are you afraid of immigrants?
Why? I'm not afraid of immigrants.
Because you don't. Every time.
I support legal immigration.
Sure you do. Well, a lot of these people, the Haitians, were legal immigrants. You sure didn't like them.
Well, they came in illegally and then they were granted temporary protected status.
Which is legal.
Okay. We have a lot more topics to talk about on Rising right after this.